A few months ago, I found out my wife was cheating on me. The divorce was finalized just a few days ago. I am 30 years old and a company employee. My wife is 28 years old and a company employee. We have no children. We have been married for 4 years and live in a rental. Our goal was to buy a house. We supposedly had a substantial savings account. However, we keep our savings separate, so it was hard to tell for sure. At some point, my wife suddenly started coming home late. Until then, she used to come home earlier than me, but she started coming home after 11 p.m. every day. We would talk for a little bit before she'd fall asleep. We had meals and did laundry separately. On weekends and holidays, she would do her own laundry, then leave the house before I knew it. She was hardly ever home, and since we both worked, we had to share the housework. I lived alone for a long time, so I could do most of the housework myself. I thought that whoever was free should do whatever needed done. She told me she'd been given an important project to work on. "I'm going to be working on it for a while," she said. I told her, "Well, that's awesome. Don't worry about me and keep working hard." I feel like a fool for cheering her on so carefree. The discovery of the affair was a coincidence. I found a cell phone I'd never seen before. Was I wondering, what's this? I took a look at it and found a bunch of emails and photos of them together. She was probably using it to communicate with her lover. I immediately called the detective agency to investigate the affair. The result was guilty. She was completely guilty. My wife had left the office on time every day. She wasn't busy at work at all. After she left the office, we found a picture of her going into her lover's apartment. She must have gone shopping at the supermarket. She had big shopping bags in both hands, probably ingredients for dinner. I wondered whose wife she was. I laughed a little. According to the investigation, the man between us came home around 7 p.m. My wife left the apartment a little after 10 p.m., so they've been doing this for months, and I guess she thinks she hasn't been figured out yet. When she'd come home, she'd say things like, "I've been busy," or "I'm tired," like she was complaining about work, or that her computer crashed today, or that she left work late because of an extended executive meeting. How could she come up with so many excuses every day? I also had the detective office investigate her lover. He's my wife's boss at work. He's 42 years old and married. The apartment was rented by him for the purpose of their affair. I was surprised that the agency was able to find out so much in a few days. I felt ashamed when they said, "It was very easy this time." After that, I waited for the results of the investigation and I went to consult a lawyer. I want to divorce my wife. I told them I wanted to make sure to get alimony and revenge against her lover. The lawyer was a very experienced and kind man who looked like he had grandchildren. "I wonder what had happened to your wife," he said, stunned at the results from the investigation. So the lawyer acted immediately. It was easy because we had a lot of evidence. He said he would send a content-certified letter to the lover and wife immediately. Finally, the revenge drama begins. But at that time, I felt lonely, sad, frustrated, and empty because my wife, whom I loved and married, had betrayed me so brazenly. She had abandoned our life together, and she was devoting herself to another man. How could I not be her? The next day, I made a kimchi hot pot for dinner. My wife loves it, but it's easy to make and delicious. I also bought a cake. I went out of my way to buy it at a slightly expensive bakery. I also bought a cheap bottle of wine because I know nothing about wine. When my wife came home, I smiled, and said, "You must be tired. Thank you for your hard work every day," trying to greet her happily. She might say she isn't hungry, but I'll let her sleep in peace. And the next morning, I would be even nicer to her. That's what I was thinking. My insides were tightened in knots, though. The content-certified mail would probably arrive the next day or so. I was going to take a paid day off work and receive the mail myself. I was going to say, "Okay, here you go," as I handed it to her. Then I was going to leave the house while she was reading it, leaving her a note. Maybe I should have an installed wiretap to see how she reacts. I'd also leave a set of divorce papers and the keys to the apartment. In the note, I'd write things like, "Thanks for the memories," or "I wish you and your lover happiness." I was waiting for my wife's return while thinking about such things. But I got into an argument with my wife as soon as she came home. It seemed she didn't like the fact that I'd cooked dinner. She called me manipulative and a harasser. I couldn't control myself and got emotional. In the middle of our heated argument, my wife got mad and overturned the hot pot. The contents of the boiling pot splashed onto my thigh, and the food splattered all around me. Without thinking, "It's hot!" I yelled. I ran to the bathroom and ran cold water over the top of my pants. The water calmed me down a bit, but when I turned off the shower, the pain was quite severe. I gently took off my pants. My left leg was red from thigh to knee. Before I knew it, my wife came to the door of the bath. In a quiet voice, she said, "I'm sorry." She apologized repeatedly. She was probably surprised at what she'd done, and I think she was afraid of how angry I might get. When the pain subsided to a certain extent, I took out an ice pack out of the freezer and wrapped it around my thigh with a towel. Even with the ice pack wrapped around my leg, it still tingled, so I decided to exaggerate the pain a bit to make her feel bad. My wife paced back and forth, looking at me the whole time with tears swelling in her eyes. After that, I deliberately picked up all the ingredients from the pot and began to wipe up the juices. It was supposed to be an act, but as I was picking everything up, I actually started to feel sad and tears started running down my face. I couldn't get a good grip on the tofu and it crumbled into pieces in my hands. I brushed away my wife's attempts to help me, and I continued to clean up the mess with tears in my eyes. I had always thought of her as a quiet and gentle wife, but the moment she threw the pot, she was a different person. She was evil, I began to think. My wife, who used to be so lovely, but she's changed so much since she got involved with another man. I know it was partly because of the pain in my leg, but I just couldn't stop crying after noticing the change in my wife. After that, I kept trying to show her how I was enduring the pain. Blisters had started to form on my legs, so it really did hurt. Even so, I acted like it hurt more than it really did. When I saw my wife becoming flustered, I felt a little better, so I thought I'd push the envelope even further. I'd get rid of all the frustration I'd been feeling up until now. The next day, my wife made some unexpected moves. First, she took a day off from work and went with me to the hospital. Even though I keep refusing it, she took care of me. Even while preparing meals and doing housework, she wouldn't leave my side. Maybe my overacting backfired. She looked worried and apologetic and tearful throughout the day. I didn't eat. I avoided conversation. I kept acting like I didn't want to deal with her anymore. At the hospital, I had them write me a medical report. It was a second-degree burn. The blisters were the size of my palm. It must have rubbed against my pants, causing the blisters to burst. I was surprised when the doctor said I was at risk of getting a bacterial infection. When my wife heard about it, she took the next day off. She was acting really meek. She probably doesn't think I know she's cheating on me. Maybe it's guilt for getting me burned. She's never let me out of her sight, always following me at a distance. I'd love for her to see the contents of the letter, but now I'm not prepared to leave. Even packing, my wife won't leave me, so it's going to be hard. I can't even move this stuff out before she sees the letter. But if I kick my wife out, I'm sure she'll go to her lover's place. Even if she goes there, I'm sure he'll turn her away. That's why it would be more damaging for me to leave. There was a reason why he wouldn't welcome her in. It was in a text message on his cell phone. "Honey, tonight make dinner something with meat." "Okay." "Oh, and buy some alcohol." "Okay, I will." "I will be late today, so you can just make dinner and go home." "No, it's okay. I'll wait." "I told you I will be late, didn't I?" "I understand." "You're a husband." I wanted to shove it in his face. Her lover didn't care at all. Just when I thought that, my wife said, "I love you. I want to be with you forever." That's what she wrote. From what I saw, my wife was more in love with him, and he was just playing with her. It makes me uncomfortable just to think about it. That night, I told my wife to go to work tomorrow. She was worried about the burns, but I told her it didn't hurt. "I'll go to work tomorrow too," I told her, and she looked a little relieved. And then, "I've got some work I need to get done today, so don't worry if you hear something in the middle of the night." I lied. After she went to bed, I was going to pack up my stuff. I was only going to take what I could carry out, but I regretted it so much. I should have never suppressed my emotions during that argument. It would have been so much easier if I had just left the house. But now that it had come to this, I had to sneak out of the house without my wife noticing. I spent the night preparing everything. I packed all the necessities into a cardboard box and sent it to my company by post from a nearby convenience store. Then I signed and sealed the divorce papers. On a note, I wrote instructing her to change her name back to her maiden name after the divorce. I also prepared a stamped envelope to send to the attorney's address. Then I wrote a letter. The contents of the letter were, since the day I became suspicious of my wife, until yesterday, I wrote everything that happened in a diary style. This must have been a shock to her. I confessed his hurt I had been holding simply. I wrote about the process of despair. I never made my wife a bad person. I insisted again and again that I was the one who had driven my wife into a corner. I also included the key to the house in the letter. What would my wife do if she found this in the morning? Would she go to the office? Her lover's certified mail was addressed to their company. This was an order from the lawyer. Because I really love my wife, I couldn't stop feeling betrayed. So I wanted to give them both to pay maximum price. His family life will surely turn to hell. And of course, my wife's life will also be in ruins. I myself don't think that divorce is the absolute revenge. I was planning to choose the way that my wife would suffer the most. The next morning, I laid out the things I'd prepared on the table and left the house. When I arrived at the office, I received an ungodly number of calls from my wife. I put the phone on silent, so ignored her calls. Then the next thing I know, I'm getting text messages constantly. The contents were full of apologies, but it wasn't an apology for the affair. I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable. I'm a terrible wife for putting my work before you. I will quit my job and try to be a better wife. The fact that there was no apology for the affair was a tremendous shock. I don't know what I left the letter for. Maybe she didn't read it. Depending on how my wife responded, I was a little inclined to forgive her, but I just got angrier and angrier. I received more emails than I can count. I didn't reply to any of them and ignored them. After work, I stayed at a coworker's place. I had a few single coworkers, so I figured I'd be okay for the time being. The next day, I didn't get any emails or phone calls at all. Maybe they received the content-certified mail. I called the lawyer and found out that they hadn't heard from my wife or her lover. I was curious, so I went by the apartment they rented to meet up to see if anyone was there, but the lights were off and the place looked empty. The lawyer told me, "Don't go poking around. We have to wait for them to make a move," he warned me. The next day, I got a call from a friend of my wife's at work. My wife visited her friend's house late last night, and when she told him what happened, she panicked. They were worried about her, so they didn't let her go home. She's apparently staying at her friend's place now. It seems she has calmed down some, but he can't just leave her alone, so he wants me to come over. My lawyer told me not to do anything, but I didn't want to cause trouble for others. I went to pick up my wife that night and brought her home. She was still in a state of panic. Her facial expressions, words, and actions were like a different person. Suddenly, she was crying and screaming. I thought she had a mental breakdown. When I left, she wasn't like this at all. I thought maybe she was told something by her lover. That must have been quite a response. And my letter wasn't even read thoroughly. I guess I was surprised to see only the divorce papers, or was it because of a call from her lover? Either way, the reason for her panic, I was sure had nothing to do with the affair. I stayed at home after that, but I don't know if she read my letter or not, but she became too frightened to look me in the eye. I never said a word to her. I didn't even touch the food she made. We slept in separate rooms at night. I'm planning to stay with her until she calms down a little, but she had completely disappeared from my heart. On the contrary, she became more and more annoying. She continued to be mentally unstable. I thought about taking her to a doctor, but my lawyer stopped me. Now, I was advised to avoid any action or conversation that might worry my wife. She hasn't been to work since then, but I found all the text messages from her lover on her cell phone. I could see from the text messages that he was just as panicked as my wife. But even looking at the text messages, I also felt no love or sympathy for my wife. And I found the email that may have been the cause of their panic. "I'm 3 weeks late for my period." No matter how you looked at it, my wife was in love with him, but the other guy just thought of my wife as something fun to play with. That's why he blames his wife. This explains my wife's unusual emotional state. My wife didn't have a lot of menstrual disturbances, and with more, I couldn't remember doing anything for the last 6 months. She's not very skillful at lying or bargaining, so it didn't seem all that crazy of a thing. It's a heavy subject, but it's none of my business. The two parties concerned can talk it out. You asked for it, you get what you deserve, I thought. When it came to the review for alimony and the division of property, it would be good material. As I went through more emails, I found a reply from her lover. All I got was a bunch of selfish arguments. "We're both consenting adults in this relationship. Even if you got pregnant, I'm not responsible. If you try to blackmail me, I will take legal action. When I said we'd be together someday, I meant we wanted to live together, not that we would get married. If you really want to have a child, you can have it as your husband's child. I won't recognize it, and I won't be involved in it. Since it was your mistake, you should talk to your husband and settle the situation." This made my wife feel like she had nowhere to run. She ran away to her friend's house. But fortunately, or unfortunately, I don't know, she was not pregnant. She was relieved, and so was I. I'm sure he was relieved too. But wife was still having mood swings, ups and downs. I couldn't concentrate on my work for a long time. Whenever we see each other, all I hear is apologies and excuses. I'm fed up with it. I feel sorry for my wife, but on the other hand, I have completely lost all affection for her. She lost complete contact with her lover. I've decided to work together with my wife in order to punish him. My wife sensed a slight softening in my attitude. I think she understood that we weren't divorcing right away. Guilt and self-loathing and fear of divorce were all replaced by hatred for her ex-lover. Gradually, she regained some of her pep and was able to put on makeup and go out. And then, I had a meeting with my lawyer. My wife also decided to get a lawyer. She felt so guilty about cheating on me. She was only thinking of paying alimony to me. But there was a possibility that my wife would be sued by her lover's wife as well. The lawyer pointed that out to her. Even if I got alimony from her lover, there was a possibility that his wife would demand a higher amount than given to me. My wife, who was unaware of this, she seemed to have made up her mind and get a lawyer too. My lawyer referred her to a firm he knew. From there, I asked for a lawyer who is good at divorce issues. After a while, I was called by the lawyer's office. I had a meeting with 6 people. My wife, 2 people from her lover's family, their lawyers, me and my lawyer. First, I explained the details and confirmed the facts from all parties. Next, I explained my demands. I was demanding sanctions against them. I offered him a reasonable fee. However, his lawyer seemed to be an excellent lawyer, and after much persuasion, I was left with an unanswered question. He said the evidence was insufficient. The evidence was not enough to make a case. Moreover, as far as he was concerned, that his wife was living separating from him. And he clearly said having to travel back and forth was nothing but a nuisance. And then, I sent a content certified letter to his company, but apparently it had no effect at all, so it's impossible for me to make a claim against his company or his wife. He got the story turned upside down when he brought in his lawyer. In the meantime, my wife and the man started to argue. That's because you said so. You told me to. For a while, I was forced to watch them arguing like a married couple. Even if it was in front of your husband, how could you say that? When I saw that, I really didn't care. I wanted nothing to do with him ever again. After that discussion, my wife and I had a heart-to-heart talk. She told me how the affair happened and how she was feeling. I told her how I honestly felt. I can't think about rebuilding. I want a divorce, I said. My wife agreed. She signed and sealed the papers. My wife told me the story of how she and the other man's relationship started. He was taking advantage of authority as her boss. He said he wanted her to support him, and they got to know each other through work. From my wife's point of view, she must have been made to feel like a trusted subordinate. Thanks to you, the deal was a success, he said. Let's have drinks to celebrate, she'd say, and invite him over for drinks. Eventually, she confessed over and over again that she loved him. Before I knew it, they were sleeping together. At first, she thought they had to stop this kind of relationship, but he kept telling her that he wanted to be with her someday. Gradually, she became more and more serious about it. But when I opened the lid on the matter, I realized that I was just played for a fool. With anger towards her lover and guilt towards me, I heard that she blames herself for the affair more and more. The burns are healed now. I can see a distinct difference in color between the normal skin and the burn area. These scars will probably stay with me forever. Every time I look at it, I feel frustrated and angry. I wonder if I'll always feel like this. Then I filed for divorce. She seems to have given up and was quiet, only occasional showing signs of loneliness. I moved out of the apartment immediately. I was allowed to live in the company's dormitory. My ex-wife moved to the apartment she used to meet her lover in. It was the only place she could go. I'm still negotiating with him. Ex-wife wants to talk to me about some things, but I don't want to get involved, so I ignore her. But it seems that his wife is more determined than my ex-wife. She contacted my lawyer, and they said they wanted to take everything from them. He said it's up to me what to do, and I'm thinking about it. I'm the ex-husband of the girl that her husband cheated on her with. I don't think she really wants to cooperate with me, but if the interests are aligned, I'm willing to see eye to eye. My lawyer is supposed to listen to them and let me know what's going on. I'm just trying to focus on work for now. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. We look forward to seeing you again. Please subscribe to our channel.